thinking about it, some of the most unassuming inventions have these really wild, unexpected backstories.
Hmm.
Take the motorcycle, for example.
Yeah.
You might picture, I don't know, weekend cruises or maybe that sort of rebellious style.
Right. Yeah.
But when you dig a little deeper, you find this incredible intertwined history with the military.
Definitely.
And that's really what we're diving into today for you, how motorcycles emerged and became, well, increasingly vital in military operations from the early 1900s right through World War II.
Absolutely. And, when you explore this history, like from the sources you shared, it's pretty clear that the story of the motorcycle's military adoption is actually a key part of understanding 20th century warfare.
Yeah, seems that way.
Before all the horsepower, the battlefield was dominated by actual horses.
Right, cavalry.
Exactly. They were essential for so much getting information around, scouting ahead, even moving significant numbers of troops. It's quite a shift, really, to consider how the motorcycle came along and offered something fundamentally different. So our aim today is to really understand, based on your materials, how and why these two-wheeled machines transformed from, a novelty into an absolute necessity on the battlefield during that period of huge change. Okay, let's unpack this.
Well, what's fascinating, looking at those early accounts you provided, is just how quickly armies recognized the inherent limitations of traditional cavalry, especially when faced with new technologies.
Yeah.
Even in the early 1900s, the potential of motorized transport to overcome some of those limitations was becoming apparent.
Exactly. We're talking about the very dawn of the 20th century here, when these early motorcycles started to capture the attention of military thinkers. What advantages do you think stood out to them from the sources you looked at? What made them consider trading, some of those saddles for seats?
Well, speed seems like a no-brainer, right? A motorcycle could obviously cover ground much faster than a horse.
For sure.
But beyond that, the sources also highlight a different kind of dependability. Now, while those early bikes certainly weren't trouble-free,
Oh, I bet.
they offered a different type of reliability compared to the, unpredictable nature of animals. And crucially, they showed they could navigate some pretty challenging terrain, perhaps even more effectively than a large group of cavalry.
Exactly. And a really clear early example of this in action, as highlighted in one of the articles you sent over, is the Mexican expedition in 1916 and 1917.
Ah, yes.
This is where the U.S. Army really put Harley-Davidson motorcycles through their paces while pursuing Pancho Villa. It stands out as one of the first well-documented instances of motorcycles being used in a real military operation.
You can almost picture it.
Yeah, you can almost picture those early bikes kicking up dust across the desert in those historical photos, can't you?
Totally. That expedition really served as a practical demonstration, didn't it? For military leaders, showing what these machines could actually do in a demanding environment.
Mm-hmm.
It provided some valuable real-world lessons and helped solidify the idea that motorcycles had a genuine role to play in modern warfare.
Right. So moving forward a bit then, World War I erupts. And from the materials you shared, it's really evident that this is where the motorcycle truly stepped into a pivotal role, wouldn't you agree?
Oh, absolutely.
Especially when it came to something as critical as communication.
Absolutely. World War I presented some unique challenges, and one of the biggest was just maintaining reliable communication across those vast, often chaotic battlefields.
Yeah, treacherous.
Early radio technology was still quite primitive, and susceptible to interference or just plain failure.
Right. Unreliable.
This created a critical need for a fast and dependable way to relay messages between command centers and the troops on the front lines. And it sounds like from the sources, that's where the motorcycle messenger corps really became indispensable.
Precisely. These riders became absolutely vital, braving all sorts of dangerous conditions, mud, shell fire, you name it, just to deliver crucial information.
Incredible bravery.
Totally. You had some specific countries and the motorcycle models they relied on in your research. Let's delve into that a bit, starting with the United States. What did you find there?
So the U.S. military, according to my notes, leaned heavily on domestic manufacturers, the big names, Harley-Davidson and Indian Motorcycle.
The classics.
Exactly. Over 20,000 of their machines were deployed during the war, and their roles actually extended beyond just carrying messages. They were also used for reconnaissance, like scouting ahead of advancing troops. And even for medical evacuations, allowing wounded soldiers to reach aid stations much more quickly.
Which, when you think about the technology of the time, is quite remarkable, these relatively early machines handling such critical tasks under incredibly difficult circumstances.
Mm.
What did your sources reveal about what the British forces were relying on?
Britain, it seems, turned to triumph, and their Model H became particularly significant.
Ah, the triumphs.
Yeah, it even earned the nickname Trusty Triumph, which really speaks volumes about its reliability in those demanding wartime conditions.
Trusty triumph, I like that.
What's fascinating here, as one of your articles pointed out, is that the Model H was one of the first motorcycles to be mass-produced specifically for military service. That really highlights that growing recognition of their importance on a large scale.
Trusty triumph. It's a wonderful moniker, isn't it? Really captures the spirit of the time and the reliance placed on these machines. And what did your research indicate about Germany's adoption of motorcycles in the Great War? Were they as quick to embrace them as, say, the US or Britain?
Well, it appears Germany did utilize early BMW and DRAD models, but their adoption wasn't quite on the same massive scale as seen in the US or Britain during World War I.
Okay.
However, this early experience, as one of your sources suggests, would certainly inform their later developments and strategies, kind of laying the groundwork.
Right, planting the seed for later. And you really can't discuss World War I and military motorcycles without at least mentioning Corporal Roy Holtz and his Harley-Davidson. That account of him riding into Germany at the end of the war, that's practically become a legendary moment.
It really is a symbolic moment, isn't it? An American soldier on an American-made motorcycle entering enemy territory as the conflict drew to a close.
Yeah.
It sort of underscored the global reach and impact of these machines, even in these relatively early stages of their military application.
Okay, so World War I really solidified the motorcycle's position in military thinking, laid that foundation. But then comes World War II, and from what you've shared, it sounds like that's when things really accelerated. This is where it gets really interesting.
You're absolutely right. If World War I laid the groundwork and established those initial roles, World War II saw a significant expansion and refinement of how motorcycles were utilized. Technological advancements in the bikes themselves played a big part in this, leading to even more diverse applications across the battlefield.
So beyond just delivering messages, what new roles did motorcycles take on in the Second World War? Based on your sources, what else were they doing?
Well, the sources indicate they were used extensively for reconnaissance, providing really fast and agile scouting capabilities, much more flexible than larger vehicles.
Nimble, yeah.
They were crucial for patrol duties, covering large areas quickly. And in some instances, they even played a direct role in combat support, whether it's transporting small units or even providing mobile fire support sometimes.
Wow. Let's talk about some of the iconic bikes of this era then. Germany had the BMW R75 and the Zundap KS750. I've heard they were incredibly robust, well-engineered machines. What did your research uncover about them?
They were indeed renowned for their ruggedness and durability. A key feature was the inclusion of sidecars, often with driven wheels.
Ah, the driven sidecar wheel, right?
Exactly. That gave them exceptional off-road capability, which was absolutely vital for the kind of mobile warfare being waged, especially on the Eastern Front.
Makes sense.
Some even featured reverse gears, which was incredibly useful in navigating tight spots or, extricating themselves from difficult terrain like mud or shell holes.
A reverse gear on a motorcycle, that's something.
Yeah. And their extensive use in what was known as the blitzkrieg strategy really highlights their importance in those rapid offensive maneuvers. For our listeners, blitzkrieg was basically a military tactic emphasizing swift, coordinated attacks,
Right, combined arms.
where the speed and mobility of vehicles like these motorcycles were absolutely crucial, right?
Exactly. The speed and maneuverability offered by these bikes were integral to the success of those early German offensives. Now, on the Allied side, the U.S. had the Harley-Davidson WLA, often referred to as the Liberator. What made that bike so significant in the context of the war?
Ah, the WLA. Well, the Harley-Davidson WLA earned its iconic status for several reasons. Firstly, the sheer number produced was just staggering, over 90,000 units.
90,000, wow.
Its relatively simple but robust design made it reliable in a wide range of conditions. While it might not have been quite as technologically advanced as some of the German bikes, maybe,
Perhaps not, yeah.
its ease of maintenance and the sheer availability of spare parts were significant advantages in a global conflict stretching across continents.
Absolutely critical for logistics.
It was used for a huge array of tasks, from police actions and escort duties to reconnaissance and even light transport. Just a real workhorse.
The sheer scale of production really underscores just how vital they were considered to the Allied war effort. And Britain, of course, had its own dependable workhorses, too.
Absolutely. The British forces relied heavily on bikes like the BSA M20, the Norton 16H, and the matchless G3.
Familiar names.
These were known for their dependability and were widely used by both British and Commonwealth forces across various theaters of the war. You'd often see them fitted with radio equipment for maintaining communication, or even small arms for self-defense or light combat roles.
So adapting them further. And it's interesting to note, as you pointed out in one of your sources, that even the Soviet Union utilized their own motorcycle designs during the war.
Yes, the Red Army employed Soviet-made Ural and Devry motorcycles. What's fascinating here and kind of ironic is that their designs were heavily influenced by the German BMW models.
Ah, really?
Yeah, showcasing a sort of technological mirroring or adaptation happening even in the midst of the conflict, capturing tech and reverse engineering it, perhaps.
Interesting how that works. Now, you mentioned something earlier that really stands out, a collapsible motorcycle designed for paratroopers. That sounds like something straight out of a, I don't know, James Bond film.
It really does.
Tell us more about this well bike, based on what you found.
The well bike was a truly ingenious, if slightly odd-looking, creation developed by the British. The core idea was to create a motorcycle that was as compact and lightweight as possible.
Right.
So it could be packed into a container and dropped by parachute alongside paratroopers. The goal was to provide these soldiers, once they landed, often behind enemy lines, with a means of rapid transportation.
Get moving quickly.
Exactly. Allowing them to quickly move to their objectives or link up with other units. Its extreme portability was its defining feature. Didn't have much power or range, but it could get you moving.
A parachute-deployable motorcycle. It really highlights the level of innovation and, well, out-of-the-box thinking that wartime necessity can drive.
That's right.
It shows how even seemingly straightforward technologies were being adapted in incredibly creative ways. So we've covered quite a journey here, haven't we? From those early, almost experimental uses of motorcycles
Right back with Pancho Villa.
to their truly indispensable role in the major conflicts of the first half of the 20th century. They evolved from being primarily message carriers to fulfilling a multitude of roles on increasingly complex battlefields. So what key takeaways do you see from all this?
Well, if we tie everything together, like the sources you provided help us do, we see a clear progression. The motorcycle filled a critical need in military capabilities. It offered this unique combination of speed, mobility, and utility that, traditional methods like horses or even early trucks just couldn't provide in the same way.
A unique niche.
Exactly. Its growing importance directly reflects the changing nature of warfare in the 20th century, with that increasing emphasis on speed, maneuverability, and rapid communication.
It really makes you consider, doesn't it? We've seen just how crucial motorcycles were in the first half of the 20th century. But what about today? In our modern, highly technological military landscape, do these two-wheeled machines still have a role to play? It's definitely something worth pondering.
This raises a really interesting question, yeah, and it's one we could certainly explore in a future deep dive. We could delve into their potential applications maybe in Cold War conflicts, or the specific tasks they might be used for in Special Forces operations today.
Special forces is interesting.
And even consider if they have any relevance in the age of drones, satellites, and advanced high-tech warfare.
Exactly. Do they still fit? So, as we conclude this deep dive for you, it's clear that the story of the military motorcycle is far richer and more compelling than many might initially imagine.
Much more than just cruising.
Absolutely. It's a powerful example of how technology, even seemingly simple technology, continually evolves and finds surprising and persistent applications in even the most demanding of circumstances. Join us next time as we continue to explore the fascinating life of the warbike and its ongoing story.